Hi, in this film I want to show you how to adapt my registration device, my tabletop printing device, to accommodate a smaller piece of paper. In this series of Lino with Laura, I'm going to be hand printing rather than using a printing press. So I am going to use my desktop registration device. This is something that we created based on the frame that I use in my printing press. If you've watched the previous series of Lino with Laura, you'll have seen my press in action with its frame. And this is simply a tabletop version. So there are lots of other ways of dealing with registration with Lino, the different ways of lining up your print accurately. So you don't have to use one of these frames, but I'm going to be using it. I need to use smaller paper on it, so I'm going to show you how I'm going to adapt this frame to accommodate that paper. So the first thing I'm going to do is to take a piece of card. Now this card is about 140 grams, I'm guessing, so it's quite flimsy, but the back of a cereal packet would be perfect for this. What you don't want is anything thicker than the frame. So this is 3mm deep, so no material that is thicker than 3mm. So this piece of card is absolutely perfect. And the first thing I'm going to do is to slide it into place. Now I want a good corner, that one's a bit creased up, so just going to pop it under the frame because I want to cut this bit out and I need to know what size to cut that. So I'm simply going to take a pen and draw around, like so. So I'm just going to put that to one side, and then I've got my piece of card. And I'm going to cut that out using a straight edge and a knife. There are full step-by-step instructions with photographs for how to do this process on my website. So in addition to this video, if you go to my website and you go to the resources section and you look for Lino Cut there, there's a PDF you can download showing you this process. So now I have a piece of card to fit into the frame of my registration device. I need to decide what size hole I want to cut in it. So I've done some measurements here. So I've decided on the size of my lino. So that's 21.5 centimetres by 17.5 centimetres. And I need to leave a sort of breathing space around the lino. So the hole has to be a bit bigger than that size because I want to be able to rub the paper right up to the edge of the lino when I'm printing. So I've added half a centimetre around the lino, and that makes my hole size 22.5 centimetres by 18.5 centimetres. And the actual paper size that is dictating all of this is, it's because I'm using this origami editioning paper, and that paper size is 21 by 26 centimetres. So I need to cut out a hole in the centre of this. So I need to find the centre of the piece of card first. And I'll simply do that by putting across the centre of it from corner to corner. So I'm just going to go corner to corner on a diagonal. And then I can use a set square to give me centre lines that are nice and accurate. this just keeps everything nice and neat. So I've worked out the size of the hole that I want, so I'm just going to measure out and get that right in the right place. So let's just make sure that I have got the right measurements before I cut it. So just taking your time with this when you're measuring it all out, it just means you end up with a nice neat adaptation for your device. I always have to work quite hard on getting these things right. I'm not naturally good at getting straight edges and proper right angles, as Ben, who does my framing, would be the first to say. So having to focus a bit here. Okay. So now I'm just going to cut the hole out of the centre with my straight edge and my knife. So in some ways this is very similar to the way we set up the registration for the print in Lino with Laura, the first series, when we were using the paper with the decal and we had to cut a card to fit into the frame on the press. This is a similar adaptation that we're doing here. There we go. So the next thing I'm going to do is just nip off the corners on the outside edge of the card. That's simply because the device itself has slightly rounded corners, so this will just pop better into the frame when I do that. And before I do anything else, I'm going to mark the lines on this piece of card that I'm going to need to use to mark my registration on my piece of printing paper. So I'm going to use a piece of paper from the Origami paper pack that I'm going to be using throughout this, just as a guide to position. So I want that, and I'm doing this more or less by eye. I just want to see that that is, as you can see, it's centered, and just make sure that that's nice and even. And then I'll just use that as a guide to put a long line across the end of the card. Like so. And then I just need to put some lines across for me to mark up onto the back of the paper. And the easiest way to do that is actually just to use the frame. So if I pop my frame back, you can see that it too has a long line down the edge here, down the short edge. And if I put that into place, then I can simply copy those lines across. They don't, it's not essential that they all line up. It's just, it's nice and easy just to copy them across. So you need to use the registration device, you need lines on all three sides when you mark up the paper, and that's something we'll look at when we get around to making the print. For now, I'm just going to copy the lines across from the device itself onto my piece of card. Okay. So now I have my piece of card with all the information on it, just like it is on the registration device, so that I'll be able to use it to line up my paper when I come to make the prints. So the next thing I'm going to do is to make it a little bit sturdier and also prevent the card from tearing as it goes in and out of the device. And to do that, I'm just going to put some sticky tape on it. So this is a bit sort of craft project, but it is quite helpful. So I'm just going to coat the whole thing in tape, basically. And I'm just taking the trouble to make sure that the tape doesn't go over the inside of the inside hole, because it's going to be much easier to trim off the outside than off the inside. This little step isn't essential, but it makes it easier to keep using the piece of card if you do it. Okay, so now I've got that sorted, I'm going to just trim off the excess sellotape. So now I've got my adaptation all marked up and it's covered it in its sticky tape, and I need to put it into the press. So I'm going to use masking tape, and I want it to be flush to the top of the frame. And the way I'm going to do that is just to get my masking tape and stick that tape to the frame. And this may all seem incredibly fiddly, but the fact is that what you need when you do an adaptation like this is something that is going to withstand all the printing and not move and not be a problem, so that your prints line up accurately throughout the whole project. So it is really worth taking the time to do it properly and making sure that everything is correct. There we go. So the next bit I have to stand up for. And I'm just going to turn the frame around so that it's this top part of it is nice and flat, So now I've got the tape in place. I've just opened the frame up flat so that it's nice and flat on the desk, and I'm going to pop the insert down into place. Okay. And then I can press it into place against the desk and it's nice and firm. And the final thing that I'm going to do is just copy over those lines so that they're nice and clear when I come to print. And this will give me an adaptation to this registration device that is nice and accurate and means that the prints that I print by hand will be as well lined up as the prints that I would print on my printing press. So that now gives me a smaller frame that's going to accommodate that smaller size paper. So I hope that's been helpful and that you'll join me for the next film.